And we're gonna go live here.
What's going on, guys?
Hey everybody, we're live and
we're
we're gonna go
live.
live on
IG.
Instagram.
Hey,
Hey everybody,
what's
we're
going on?
live.
How you doing?
Peace.
How you doing?
Welcome. Okay, dare I ask you, how did you apply the word this week? I already know mine because I was just showing you the memory verse I did.
I had a long week, and I gotta tap into the word more. You're really good at your memory verses, but I have to be more consistent with reading the word.
Well, how was your week? You don't have to say. You don't have to say that. I mean, it's really kind of like our top of the question.
My week was rough, man.
Yeah,
my week was rough. I got a lot of things that I have to work on with myself and with God.
Yeah,
I gotta lean into God more to find out more about myself and who I am.
Well said. Yes.
So I got a lot of work to do.
Don't we all? Like, it's so funny how when things are so heavy, and this is what I always say about my anxiety, actually, which is so funny because this is not related to that, but when things get really heavy and dark, like there's nowhere else to go for me than to like pray and like seek God's word. And it's then when I'm so raw and like I'm so in tune. It's like God has a microphone or something. You know what I'm saying? Like other times, like when everything's just whatever, then I go and I do my memory verse and I pick out a color and it's all whatever, practicing my handwriting, and that stuff's good. But it actually hits home more when you're seeking something, and so that's something that I learned this week. But okay,
and it's kind of like goes back to that video I watched last week. Miss Wong.
Hosanna Wong. The one we talked about last week. Yeah.
And she said what I'm trying to start doing, where it's get to know God more and then you get to know yourself. So that's going to be my journey for the last, probably that's going to be my journey for the rest of my life, but I'm trying to be consistent with it this last 4 months.
Yeah, well, that's, all of us really, well, hopefully all of us, but I know for me, for sure, I feel the same way. And anybody out there who might be going through something that hurts a little bit, it's like, just hang in there. And I try to just think to myself that like, something good is going to come out of this. Like whenever you have like a dark time, you just have to recognize that like, this is just a symptom. Right. And like it's gonna lead you, if you go to the right place, if you go to the source, you go to God and say, what does God say about this? Right. This is so painful or irritating or something. And like, what does God say about this? And I find for myself the immediate reaction to God's instruction is sort of like rejection. Like, well, I'm not trying to do that. But then it's like, okay, let me just be obedient. And what comes out on the other side from past experience has always been an upgrade. It's always been a new outlook, a new opportunity, something that makes me better, something that I could have never thought of looking from the other side, but looking back on it, it's always like, wow, that had to happen. So I try to remember that. It's hard to remember that when you're going through something, but that's not what I was going to say. The one that I actually, it's so funny because I didn't realize we were reading this week. But in my memory verses, I go and I look for specific topics. Like, like here, I was looking for like orderliness, hope, working together. Last month, I had topics like diligence. What did I have last month? It's just like I'll just sit there and be like, what do I think I need to work on?
And you know what? That's that book you gave me too that has that.
All of the topics, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, because everything, the Bible is life instruction.
I probably have to do that.
It's
because
like
you gave me a it's like promises. It has everything in there: anxiety, worries, some financial problems. Maybe need to tap into.
And then what happens is you're looking for something, and I mean, I've even Googled it. You got to be careful with the Google stuff, because you got to make sure you have a valid source, whatever it leads you to. But I'll look up, what does the Bible say about obedience? What does the Bible say about renewal? What does the Bible say about courage, about trust? Like, these are the things that I looked up for August. For this month, like I said, it was orderliness, working together, hope, some other things, like whatever had came to my mind while I was sitting there coming up with ideas of like, what do I want to learn more about, you know what I mean? And those are the things. One of them was Ecclesiastes 3:1, and the other one was Ecclesiastes 3:11 through 3:13. So that's what I'm going to say, because this is how I applied the word this week. Sometimes I get into this, and I probably mentioned this several times, sometimes I get into this routine of like waking up, getting ready, going to work, working way too late, and then getting off of work and just kind of like going through these mundane like routines, and it can just seem so daunting, like, well, what's the point? And I recognized, and it's so funny because I say this at work a lot, but I found a word now that supports it. But I'll say to my coworkers, like, make sure you enjoy your work today, because it's a choice. It's like you could begrudgingly answer every email, plug things into systems, build spreadsheets, and whatever it is that you do, you could do it begrudgingly with an attitude, or you can be like, you know what? I'm going to have fun with this. I'm good at this. I'm good at building spreadsheets. I'm good at creating workflows. I'm good at, punching in timesheets or whatever it is that you do. I'm good at this. Or if I'm not, I'm going to get better today, right? It's like you can decide to have a good time. And so that's where this kind of came out of, because I was like, I really want to enjoy my work. I want to enjoy my day. And I was looking for something like that. And what happened was I came across Ecclesiastes 11 and 3:11 through 3:13. Which basically says, God gave us the ability to think about his word, but we can never completely understand everything he does. And yet he does everything just at the right time. I learned the best thing for people to do is to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. God wants everyone to eat, drink, and enjoy their work. These are gifts from God. That's the easy to read version. But it's so interesting because eat, drink, and be merry. You hear that all the time. That's in the Bible. We come across a lot of stuff. We're like, oh, it's in the Bible. So it's like you should enjoy your work as well. So that's how I applied the word this week. I did have fun at work. I had some hiccups come up, but I handled them. And nothing's ever perfect, so there's always going to be something to work on. James was mentioning that he wants to work on a lot of stuff. I do too. And it's like, we're not doing this alone. Like, God gave us a whole instruction book, and we have a relationship with him. So you just talk to God and he tells you what to do. Whether you want to do it or not, that's the work. You know what I mean? Like, even with the instructions that I get all the time, but like, I got some recent instructions. I was reaching out and I was like, oh, but I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be like this, or I want to have an attitude, or I want to, do this or that. And sometimes I'll be reading something, it'll be instructing me, and I'm like, oh, but that's the work, the being obedient, regardless of what your emotions are, because your emotions are going to lie to you. Your emotions are going to lie to you. You want to sit in those emotions.
That's the hard part. Your emotions.
Your emotions are like your crazy best friend who wants to like do donuts with no seatbelt on. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just making this up. But your crazy best friend who wants to go to Vegas,
and it seems fun in the moment.
And your emotions are always gonna, if you let them get the best of you, they're gonna lead you down the path that is not the wisest choice. So, I mean, those are my words. I don't know. I just think that that's been my experience. That's all I'll say about that. But that's the work. That's the hard part, is being obedient. Once you find that answer and applying it, but this was good for me this week, and I certainly enjoyed my work, and it made for better days. Which really is funny, because when we talk about what we read this week, it was a little dark, but it was also very eye-opening, poignant. It was like, okay, like I could see the perspective.
Yeah.
But it's like all in how you take it. That's another thing I'll say about when we read the Bible. It's like you could read a verse and one person will get something out of it, and then it'll hit someone else a whole different way. It's like whatever it is, wherever you are, whatever your needs are, right? Like it just will hit you in a different way. And it's not like you're gonna necessarily take it out of context, but you could just read into it a little bit differently because of your own personal experiences and thought patterns and things like that. So that's just very interesting too that I noticed. But anyway, let me let you get started.
No, that was good. Also, I said this earlier. I think we should print that verse out so we see it constantly at work.
Mm-hmm.
Just constantly in our work area, because we could be doing other things like editing, and we gotta just remember that.
Mm-hmm. God wants you to enjoy your work. It's a gift from God.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So we started with Proverbs 25:26, and this talks about Solomon's wisdom, of course. And it talks a lot about foolishness.
Foolishness.
So, any takeaways? I want to say this to you. Do you see how many weeks?
Yes, that's dope, right? It's like I'm telling you. See, a couple weeks ago, I was like, "We're almost halfway through." You were like, "We're nowhere near halfway through." This is halfway through. So that's probably going to be for us, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. For those who don't know, we go out of this Bible plan. It's called the 365 Daily Bible Reading Plan from teachsundayschool.com. You can go to teachsundayschool.com. They have so many different, this is not sponsored, but they just have so many different tools. They have breakdowns and summaries and stuff like that. So I bought this for like, I don't know, it was probably like under $10, or I might have even gotten it free with a package or like part of a package. But this is so helpful because it breaks everything down. It gives you the highlights, and then we go through and we answer the prompts. That's what we do here on the show, and we talk about what our other takeaways were. But anyway, he's mentioning that our original goal was to read the Bible in a year, and then we're like, well, we don't really want to do it on a time basis. We want to do it for understanding. We want to actually read and understand what we're reading, and especially with Ecclesiastes. It was hard.
It was hard. It was really
to understand what they were saying.
I can only imagine what the King James Version says.
Oh my gosh, right.
I couldn't understand.
I'm reading from the Amplified Joyce Meyer Everyday Life Bible version.
This is the English Standard Version, which is still, it's really, trust me,
it's worded very, so specifically the book of Ecclesiastes was challenging because I felt like there were a lot of like metaphors, some similes, and it was like, okay, what? How is that like that? Or what do they mean? Also, hevel. They never said this word, but when we looked up and did our research, we always read the verses and then we go back and we'll look online, like the Bible Project on YouTube. And we'll like kind of look at their recap to make sure that like we understood what we think we understood. Also, it's just like good to reinforce, right? So we did, but they mentioned a word called name. They mentioned a word hevel, which is kind of, I guess it's a Hebrew word, but it relates to, I guess it describes vapor or smoke. And it describes what life is like. In our version, it kept saying words like fleeting, meaningless, futility, vanity. We saw that word. It says in there 38 times. It's a lot. But the idea that it means hevel, that's a better description, because if you think about vapor, like you try to grab it and you can't, you could see it, right? But it doesn't really exist to touch. And it also is its being. We talked about the word human being, the term human being. It's like we're human beings because we are being here, like, but it's an active thing. Like once you stop being, you're passed away. But it's also this idea that you have to be doing something in order to be living, right? And so anyway,
and they also said smoke is thick. So it can get real thick.
Get real thick and you can't see.
It's
so many different. Yeah, it was so many different perspectives. But will just kind of like, and this is why that verse or that book, when we get to it, we'll talk about how heavy it is, because it's just like you're thinking of like life. Nobody wants to sit there and think about their life ending, but that's the majority of the book is about. Your life, everybody's gonna die, and it's just like pretty heavy. But I mean, listen, it's pretty good. We definitely recommend it. Hey,
what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Okay, so what were you gonna ask me?
So Proverbs. Any takeaways from Proverbs 25?
Man, let me see. I know I did some highlights, but Proverbs itself, it's just like there's always takeaways. It's never a time where I'm looking at Proverbs and I'm like, I didn't get anything from that. Okay, so wait, I'm already in Ecclesiastes 25 through 26. Let me go specifically there. Okay. 25:2, I highlighted. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. I guess it's just a juxtaposition of like what God does versus what people do. And like we always want to know more. We always want more. We want to know more. We want more money. We want more water. We want more land. We want more everything. But it's like God doesn't do that. It's just us anyway. That's not. There's so many things. Like a broken tooth or an unsteady foot is confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble. Like if you have brought something up a couple weeks ago about how you learned something from what is his name? The guy would be like loser, Brian Tracy. Yeah. He was like, if you work with a person who like cheated on his wife, right? Like you can't trust him to do a business deal because look what he does to his wife. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
it's real. Like, so that's kind of how I looked at this. Proverbs 25:19. The confidence in an unfaithful man in a time of trouble is pretty unsteady. Right? Like you can't really, you can't really think that person is not going to betray you or run out on you or seek out a better deal, because that's what he did to the person that's supposed to be the closest to him. Yeah. So what do you think he's going to do to you? He's going to do to you? Right? That's kind of stuck out to me. Yeah. There's some other things that stuck out to me too. What stuck out to you?
Proverbs 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. And that just says so much in it. We just talked about emotions and not getting the best of you, but if you tend to lean on your emotions, that means you don't have self-control because you're leaning on your emotions. Yeah. Self-control is not leaning on your emotions and passions like anger, love, right? And it's just like you're having self-control to understand your environment and where you're at in life in that moment. Yeah. So, yeah.
Man, specifically anger. I've been having some trials and tribulations with anger. Hey, what's up, Mike? He said real deep. He must have been talking about what you said. Yeah. Or what either of us said.
Might have been what you said.
But I just feel compelled to share this. Like I've been dealing with how I have a relationship with anger. Like what does anger do to me? One of the more recent things that I'm learning about me, I don't know if it's pertaining to anger or if it's just my experience, but anger typically is the initial emotion, and it's really kind of like the appetizer for what really is happening, right? It's just like anger is probably the most immature emotion of them all, right? If you think about a child who gets their toy taken away from them and they start pouting, it's like really, or their friends, abandon them and they're angry or whatever. Like it's really like you're hurt, or you might be angry because you feel disrespected. You might be angry because it's something else, but it's really kind of like the precursor to the real emotion. So it's like being more emotionally mature to me means like defining what the anger is, what it really means, right? But like just like you said, if you don't have any self-control and you let things like anger take over your thought process and control what you do, right? Because if you got something in your mind, there's a good chance you're going to act on it. And you know, this is really helping. Reading is actually really helping me, reading the Bible, to kind of put a name to some of these things, and understand like what you're supposed to do with it. Like I said, it's not fun. It doesn't, like the answers that I'm getting, I'm saying it's fun to read the Bible, but like sometimes you find the answer that you're seeking and it doesn't sound like that great to do, right? It's just like, what? Forgive your enemy? No, that's not what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like it's wild, but like that's the instruction of God. So anyway, we get ready to jump into this because we're gonna get to Ecclesiastes. So we're gonna touch on some of this other stuff.
Here's the question, right? Jesus says if we call someone a fool, we become foolish. How does Solomon use this word differently?
Okay. So I didn't know that Jesus said that. But if Jesus said we call someone a fool, we become foolish. I'm gonna go ahead and internalize that and think that means like if you think that you are in position to call someone a fool, then you really don't know what this is about. Like God is the judge here, right? Solomon uses a lot of similes where he's comparing. So he's like, the wise man does this, but the foolish man does this, right? Like such and such are the actions of a fool, right? So I think he is doing more comparisons. So he's not calling someone a fool, but he's calling certain behaviors foolish, right? So it's like, well, if you're doing this, right? I'm just going to use you as an example. People who wear purple shirts are this, right? It's just like, I'm not saying, James, you're this. I'm saying, I'm describing something, right? So I think that's the difference and how Solomon used the word. What do you think?
That's a good answer. I was just reading it, and you're right, because he compares it, right? So Jesus is saying, if we call someone a fool, we become foolish. Solomon is like, nah, a fool is a fool. Like a fool is gonna do foolish things, and I'm gonna call him a fool. Like he's gonna he'll say stuff like, "Don't answer a fool, or you'll be arguing all night for no reason."
Yeah.
He'll say like for instance, Proverbs 26:7, like a lame man's legs will change useless is a proverb in the mouth of fools. So you hit it right on the nose, where Solomon is comparing and gives you situations of what a fool is. And Jesus is like, man, if we call somebody a fool, we become foolish.
I understand. And this is another one, 26:11. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his foolishness.
Yeah.
And like, that's really interesting because we all know about the saying of like, that's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Yep. And I've done that before, honestly. But
me too.
I wouldn't call myself a fool. I have called other people fools. Let me not lie. I have. But I agree with you. So that's interesting. I think he does. That's really,
you hit it right on the nose.
Yeah, do not answer nor pretend to agree with the frivolous comments of a fool according to his folly. Otherwise, even you will be like him.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to be taken in. Sometimes it's like that's why we do a lot of highlighting, because I could go through and highlight all of Proverbs, to be honest with you. It was just like every other line was like a gem. Yeah. But I really sort of highlight the things that stand out to me, the things that like, like in the initial reading of it, like, okay, that's something that I need to remember or I need to look into. Right. So those are the things that that's how I think Solomon used the word differently.
Yeah. Proverbs 27-29, addendum 2-10 line sayings.
Oh no, that's not the one. I thought that was the one. Was like, it's a time to do this and time to do that. But that's Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
2-10 line sayings. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
Okay.
Some say these proverbs were added later or an afterthought. What verses resonate with you? This is
maybe that's what they mean, addendum, right? Like they're adding it on. But we also noticed that some of this stuff is repetitive. It had already been mentioned earlier in the book of Proverbs. Okay, so what verses resonate with me? Okay. Things like, 26:27, whoever digs a pit for another man's feet will fall into it. Mm-hmm. And he who rolls a stone up a hill to do mischief, it will come back on him. It's like basically like whatever you do comes back to you, but it's really like intention. So if you focus on that thing, I do believe this. I don't think the Bible says this. I don't know, but it's whatever you focus on expands. And it's like if you're looking to do harm to someone and you're thinking about that thing and you carrying around and you thinking about how this is going to ruin somebody, it's like you're really kind of planning your own demise because that's what you're focused on. That's what you're building, ruin. You know what I mean? Like that's what you stand for. It's very odd, but so that one stuck out to me. And then some of the more positive things were like oil and perfume make the heart glad. So does the sweetness of a friend's counsel that comes from the heart. And it's so interesting. It's just like almost like fragrant, like the warmth of a friend counseling you or taking you under their wing or telling you like, hey, listen, it's okay, but here's my advice. Like it's like being cared for. So I got a lot of positive things out of here. Also, we found out that iron sharpens iron came out of the Bible. Yeah. It's 27:17, so that one stuck out to me. So I don't want to take them all. What stuck out to you?
Verse 24. Oh, Proverbs 27:24. For riches do not last forever, ever, and does a crown endure all generations? When the grass is gone and new growth appears and the vegetation of the mountains is gathered. Like, riches don't last forever. It's going to be gone. Riches are going to come and go, but God always provides with the land. I don't think we appreciate God's gift as much as we should.
Like nature and land and stuff. It's it is really interesting how this is where Earthbound just keeps coming to me, but like it's really interesting how we could live.
What's up, Cole?
We don't need money to live. Yeah. But obviously in our Western culture, it's obviously what we're using. But it's like everything we need comes from the earth. You know what I'm saying? Like, or from animals or, things like that. So it's really interesting because that's not necessarily like what we're working for. We're working for the currency to buy goods that were made by specialists who work in those ways. But it's so interesting to me when I look back. It's like money is not real. Money is something we made up and all collectively decided that we're going to go through. But God provides everything you need. And you think about like maybe like someone who's for those who don't know, I just found this out recently, like a few months ago. Homeless is not a good term to use anymore. It's not PC. You're supposed to say unhoused. So yes. And so I have now been saying unhoused since I've learned that. It's just like an unhoused person who might be like, okay, I don't have a place to stay and I don't have any food. Like, how am I going to get through? But I'll bet you every day they figure it out, right? Obviously, they're still here. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, somebody's going to buy you a lunch or give you a sandwich and somebody's going to, you found somewhere like a shelter or somewhere to sleep tonight. So it's like God provides us the things that we need. Without money. I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah. Hey, Rose. What's up? We're live. We're also live on our YouTube channel. So it's YouTube. Is it IICIIG? Or was it? Is it crazy?
Is it IICIIG
316?
316.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where we at.
Okay, so what's the next question? Okay, so now we get ready to get into Ecclesiastes, which was wild. One thing we learned is that Solomon
totally different
wrote it. However, it's kind of a dark one, guys. I'm not gonna lie. It's only 12 verses in here. Or it's only 12 chapters.
12
right?
chapters.
12 chapters.
Yep.
Okay. This was actually, it says the author, it was attributed to Solomon.
Yeah.
When they say that stuff, I don't know, like, do they not know for sure? But these were lessons that were learned by Solomon. When we watched the Bible Project break this down, they talked about the different voices it was written in, but one writer can write in different voices. So Solomon, even though he wrote this, it was like he had a couple of different viewpoints that he came from. And one of them was like super dark. This is the one where they kept talking about how life is fleeting. It's hevel, right? It's vapor. And they really talked about the realness of mortality. Right? He talked about how all the wisdom he has, it's been tested, and he can be the one to tell you that like life is fleeting, and we all have one thing in common: we're all gonna die. I have some additional thoughts that weren't in there. I'll just share those now. So like, my opinion is just like, so many great people have lived and passed on. I just have to think that this is not the only place we're gonna go. It's you know what I'm saying? It's like, how could all of these wonderful people who contributed so much go to, like, be just over, right? And so I actually think that, you could go to a better place. And so when Solomon's talking, he's talking from a human perspective, but we would just be so crazy to believe that this is the only experience you could have, an earthly experience. There has to be something else, because some people are only here for days, right? Like, there's babies who die in the ICU. Like, what was that about? Like, they didn't have any control over that. So, and then some people live for 100 years, but like, it just seems like, okay, especially the way he's getting ready to talk about this when we talk about it. For what, right? Like, what's the meaning of life? It's probably not life, right? I don't know. To me, it's like, okay, we're all doing this. None of us know why. Like, I've never ran into one person or one book who could say, like, here's the reason. And it's like, oh yeah, right? It's like, all of us are just here and nobody knows. Come on. It's got to be something else. It's got to be something that is leading to. That's my own theory, right? But, we'll get into that stuff as we read.
I mean, Ecclesiastes, I'm not going to lie, when we're reading this book, I had to look up a lot of verses. I was like, what does this mean?
This Bible commentary by Tony Evans is so dope, because he literally breaks down in layman's terms like what the verses mean. We were looking in this heavy on this Ecclesiastes,
because I just was like, I mean, it was pretty dark, because I remember one time it was like, there's no difference between humans and beasts. We all die. And what my wife Faith was talking about is, he basically was like, you can live 100 years and your life is so meaningless, the mountains will still be here. Nobody's gonna remember you or who you are. I was like, what is going on?
Right.
I was like, who wrote this? This is
looking for encouragement here.
This is dark. But then after like looking at the Bible Project, I started to understand, what's going on. So Ecclesiastes 1-6, it says, it breaks down meaningless without God, time for everything, trust God and enjoy your work. That's what you were saying. More things are meaningless. Fulfill vows to the Lord, and riches are deceitful. It was basically like, I remember one verse in here was like, hey, listen, the fools are going to be a fool. They're going to die. The rich, the wealthy's going to die, and the poor is going to die. I was like, golly, man.
That's the thing we all have in common.
We're all going to die.
The righteous, everybody, if that's what we've accepted as our fate. But that also makes life valuable, right? Because it's not an unlimited supply. That makes time valuable. That makes experiences valuable. It's not like you're just going to sit in a corner and watch the time pass, but it makes you want to go out and do something, because you just don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. But anyway, they talk about that too. Mm-hmm. Yep.
They talk about don't just sit there and wait for the perfect moment because your life could be gone.
Yep. Yep.
So they like using the word toil. So toil, not as much as possible, but toil enough where, because look, God is. We talked about this earlier. God is a creator, and He created us in His image. Thank you, Myron Golden, for that. And because God is a creator and created us in our image, we are creators naturally. That's why you always love to create.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just have to find a joy and love into it because God has given you the gift to create.
Yeah.
And now you have to love creating and love the work. Because, listen, we can find our work is mundane, right? Sometimes I complain. But at the end of the day, you are creating something every day.
Yeah, you are, for sure. Now, this says nobody's gonna remember.
Nobody's gonna remember
who
anyway.
you are and what you did. But that's why I'm like, I want to enjoy as much as possible, just so that for me, and obviously I want to obey God because there's something after this. Yeah. It's not just for me to go and be, a worker and then die, or be a sister and a parent or a wife and then die. It's not just for that. And it's like I'm recalling this. There were a few like really fun summers in my life. Like, I still have fun summers, but like I remember a few of them like in my 20s where it's just like, wow, these are legendary. Like the concerts I went to, the parties I went to, the times that I had, it was just a lot of fun. And I remember those summers of life just being like super fun. And sometimes you could, think about that in just different ways. That could be a metaphor really, but the idea is that I remember the first summer of COVID, it like flew by without my knowledge or approval. I did not have fun. And I remember thinking at the end of the summer, like, wow, summer's gone. I don't even remember this. Like, it was not even anything to do. Like, it was not depressing, but it was also just like, wow, I don't even remember. Like, I could not even tell you about that summer. I don't even remember it. But it's those types of things. It's like, if I had been intentional about, like, I'm going to live my life, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have some new experiences. I know we were on quarantine, but like, even if we would have been more like outside or like at the park or something like that, we could have done something. But my idea is, I'm not blaming us for staying inside, because that's what we were told to do. But I'm just saying, like, just for reflection, I don't want to have a bunch of those summers where I'm like, I don't remember what happened, or I don't, I didn't have a good time, because it's all up to me. It's all up to us to decide, like, whether we're going to enjoy it or not. You know what I'm saying? So anyway.
Question time?
Yes, time for the question.
All right.
Oh gosh. Ecclesiastes 1-6.
Yes. Is all Ecclesiastes true so far?
Okay. I do have to say one thing I didn't find to be true, but that's my own.
No, what was it?
Okay, so one thing he said was, maybe there was two things that I felt like weren't true. Okay, one thing that was true: increasing knowledge increases sorrow. That's pretty. That was pretty heavy, because I was like, the more you know, the more burden you feel. Like, all of the suffering, all of this pain. That there's no solution to this or that, and it's like it makes you sorrowful. But anyway, so you know how they say there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, listen. One time back in 2007, Steve Jobs created the iPhone, and nobody had ever seen anything like it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, now there's smartphones everywhere. So now, sure. But I do think new things can be created. Like, the internet was new. Like, maybe you could say that, like, well, something like that was created in a way of, like, socially, right? So, like, let's say Instagram, for instance. Instagram could be thought of like, oh, well, it's just a new take on a photo album. Mm-hmm. It's just a new take on sharing your summer activities.
I think the internet is.
I think the internet is new.
AI
under the sun. I think AI is new under the sun. I think iPhones, when they came out, were new under the sun. So I listen. I'm not saying that the Bible isn't telling the truth, but this is Solomon's words. Mm-hmm. And if the question is all of Ecclesiastes true so far? For me personally, there was that, and there was something else that I didn't really.
I agree with that.
Just all over, like, just in summation. I think that his perspective, and it says this came like it was probably written before, close to his death. Yeah, so I think he was reflecting on his life here. Yeah. Obviously, he didn't have a Bible to look at. So, but what I'm looking at is that he's making these statements about life on earth. Mm-hmm. And at the end, this is true, right? It's like, live a life for God and you'll be fulfilled. Like, there's just no way that's going to go wrong for you. Mm-hmm. But what I realized was that he's making these statements about life here on earth based on his wisdom. And I'm sure that is like, obviously there's a lot to take in here. That's true. Mm-hmm. But as far as it being meaningless, the way that mine was translated, that it's just meaningless or frivolous or vain or whatever. It's like, well, that's your life. You can call your life what you want to call your life, and you're wise. You're the wisest man ever lived. But I'm not going to use that word because I think that this is for something else beyond this life. Mm-hmm. You might be describing this life in that existence, and that is true. Yeah. But I'm not thinking like that. I'm thinking like, oh, okay. Once I follow all the God's instructions that I can do, right? Like then there's something else. That's what I believe. Yeah. So, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I guess I would say most of it's true. Those are the 2 points that that you said is but some of the stuff I was just like, it's 90% true. I do agree with nothing new can be created because that's what God put us on this earth for. Mm-hmm. Is to create. Mm-hmm. Right? We were just talking about that. But I'll give a verse that I like that really stood out to me. Where is it at? Ecclesiastes 4:9. 2 are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. Mm-hmm. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. I like that because it just goes into in life, and when you're doing something, you always need help. I don't think you can do anything by yourself. I think you have to have a support system. I think you have to have, whether it's a spouse, a brother, a sister, a parent,
somebody, a friend.
A friend. You have to have somebody to help you on a journey in life. But yeah, that's it. But I agree with you. Here's the second question. It's interesting. Where might Solomon have succumbed to depression or negativity that could have temporarily blinded him?
A lot of times in here, guys, because sometimes this is just downright depressing. Now, it makes sense that this was written towards the end of his life, because you got to think, like, you're at the end of your life. Mm-hmm. I don't know what his thought process was as far as, like, did they know, did they know things back then, right? Like, that we, I don't know. I assume sometimes they're like, oh, this is information that must have come out this century or whatever. Maybe he knew things, that I'm not giving him credit for, but it seemed like as he was at the end of his life, he was looking back and sort of being negative about just like the meaning of life, right? Mm-hmm. Like a life well lived. Like now you bury somebody and you celebrate them. And it's like, well, look what you contributed. right? So it's like Solomon, he probably, I'm thinking, didn't know that we would still be talking to him to this day. That was another thing that he said that I didn't agree with, because they were like, nobody's going to remember you.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to remember you once you die, and the work that you did is not going to mean anything. No. Hey, Solomon, you were wrong about that. I'm talking about you right now, buddy.
You know what I mean? King, your father.
Yep.
Joseph. I mean, we could just go to regular. We could go to Steve Jobs is remembered.
But the thing is, this was before the Bible was in, right? So, like, he may not have recognized that. Now we have the Bible. Yeah. So, like, whatever he must have learned from listening to his elders and, being wise and God giving him, like, we have the Bible now. So it's like, it's different. But I think, he might have succumbed to some negativity when he kept saying that, what's the point? Like, the earth outlasts people, and nobody is ever going to remember what you did. Nobody's going to remember you. I don't think that's necessarily true, especially not now that, post this life, we have this internet. We have like, we remember Martin Luther King every year. We have holidays. Like, I'm not saying they didn't have holidays back then, but I think things are a little different. Yeah. And there are new things under the sun. But listen. He did an amazing work of being Solomon. So
also, we don't know what else happened, right? Right. So I can't wait to. I think we read that later. Of how see the death of. We're probably gonna read that next week, where we find out why he's looking at the world from this way.
Yeah. And he also has seen a lot being king. He has to, make judgments between like who's right and who's wrong. Wasn't he the one who had suggested, like, why don't you just cut the baby in half? And then the real mom was like, never mind, take the baby. And he's like, it's you're the mother because you don't want anything. So it's like he probably saw some real crazy stuff. I really wonder what he would think about some of the things that are happening today. Like, oh man. That's so funny. It's interesting because I was thinking about this while I was walking down the street the other day for some reason. I was like, what would happen if people went back to living for hundreds of years again, like they did in the Bible? It's like, well, we wouldn't be able to like get rid of old ideals, because the way that things work now, there's a lot of tradition that dictates like, well, this is the way I was just thinking about, like Congress and stuff like that. And I'm like, we already have people like Mitch McConnell in a seat, and it's like, listen, he's obviously unwell, and nobody's going to kick him out. He basically has to be. I mean, listen, somebody has to vote him out or whatever, but it's like,
might have to retire.
My thing is, there's no term limits on that. But here's the thing. I feel like what would happen if people lived hundreds of years? Like, you think about how, like, your grandmother had certain ways that are like, okay, this is what we do for Christmas, or this is how things go, and you're not going to stop listening to your grandmother as long as she lives. It's just not what we do. I'm not going to stop listening to my mom as long as she lives, right? But then
800 years is
a long time. But it's like, look, if you live 800 years, it's likely that you're going to waste about 400 of them thinking like, I'm young, I'm going to run these streets, I'm going to drink this Fireball.
I think you know what? I don't. You know what? Like, I don't. If it was 800 years, it would have been. You think it's wicked now? I think that's why God was like, "Hey, man, listen, you guys are wilding out. Yeah, I gotta give you a certain time to live, because you can't live to 800. You out here wilding out. You're running the streets. You're 400 years old, and you act like you haven't done nothing for 400 years." But running the streets, drinking Fireball.
Oh my God!
Just out there, like in Vegas. You're just
in Vegas. You've been in Vegas for 200 years.
You're in Vegas 200 years. That's a wild life. You're just in Vegas 200 years. Knowing that you're gonna live to 800. Right. Like, man, I don't care. Like, I can wait 500 years. I've got time. Like, right? What?
I'm not gonna write that book. Can you imagine? So many things would not have gotten done. But on the flip side, people could build things and see them through, but I just don't, God does everything for a reason. And I think that he had a great reason for that. Also, probably couldn't fit that many humans on the earth because we're already sort of like running out of. We're already ruining things with our ways. So, to have more people here would just be a whole lot. So he's crying, laughing. And he said back then people and information wasn't as easily accessible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. My 400-year life.
Yo, wilding out. Like,
I would be. I'm not gonna lie. If I did
800 years.
Yeah, because it's just like
wilding for the first 400, 500.
Because you're just thinking like, I've got time. I have to get my life together. I'm not ready to settle down.
No, I'm about to be like, you gotta think like you about to be partying.
I don't need to settle down. I've got years. I've got centuries ahead of me.
Centuries. People be going crazy now.
Oh my God!
You imagine that?
I can't imagine it, but this is the type of stuff that I think on a regular basis. I just be having some wild thoughts.
People be going crazy.
Okay, so wait. What is that?
Oh, we're over here. 7 to 12. So chapter is similar to Proverbs. In an unfair world, God is fair. Mm-hmm. You can still find wisdom.
Yes.
Contentment in darkness. You're content in darkness.
Yeah.
And the conclusion of the matter.
Yeah. I know what that is. Yeah.
Yep. So this kind of, once again is still dark, but it is a bright note at the end, which we kind of like, where at the end in chapter 12, he basically says, fear God and his commandments.
And that's the wisest way to
live.
Let's talk about, before we get to the question, how many, because that's basically what the question is, I think.
Yeah.
But chapters similar to Proverbs, one thing that we noticed is that some things are repeated. Even in Proverbs, we were reading Proverbs and he was like, wait, we already read this. It's like, no, I think, because I knew we didn't read it because we didn't have any highlights. But it's like, no, this is like very similar to the wording that we've already read. Yeah. So some of it is, but I think repetition is good because it helps you to really absorb and learn. In an unfair world, God is fair. What do you think about that? In an unfair world, God is fair.
I
think I have a thought for that.
I think that with that statement,
in an unfair world,
I think
God is fair.
I think he is, but in order
for that to
be true, you have to lean into him.
You have to have a relationship with God.
If you don't, then
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Then he's not going to really care for you.
In an unfair world, God is fair. Meaning, like Solomon was saying, everything happens to everybody. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you work hard and you really put it out there and gave it the old college try, were consistent, you did all the things, you followed all the steps, and it just doesn't work out. But sometimes people who don't deserve it get the spotlight or the credit or whatever. But here's the thing that means to me. Internally, it doesn't hit the same, right? Like the people who, let's say the people who are out there doing evil and getting accolades, like maybe it feels a certain amount of good to them, but then they can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Or they're not really able to like taste the fruits of their labor because they know, but like they're always worried that it's going to get taken away because they know they got it ill way. Yeah. So it's like, I think in an unfair world, God is fair if you have a relationship with God. Yep. If you don't have a relationship with God, you just out here naked. Like you just out here experiencing the world and feeling everything. And it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. And it's like, it's not like a magic pill. It's like things are going to happen. They're going to happen. You can't protect yourself from, life. From sorrow, from life, from, joy, everything. Like everything's going to happen to you as a believer. But you have a safe place and you have a source to like be renewed from. And it's so interesting to me. I keep going back to this. When people don't believe in God, and it's like all of these things around you were created and have been here for centuries, thousands of years. And like, like the mountains or the ocean. And how can you explain that? And the way that your body works and your wounds heal and a baby is made. They said something about here how nobody knows how babies' bones are formed in the womb, right? But it happens, and a woman's body is made to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like we didn't create that. We didn't say that. Oh, if you get a cut, then the scab will form and then it'll heal itself. We didn't say like like we didn't put herbs on the earth where like,
and our bodies heal themselves.
It's wild. There's so many things. Yep. There's so many things that are like so profound. And if you don't believe that there's a God, then I don't understand how you even functioning.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, anyway, I'm not here to, it's not a mental statement. It's just, listen, there's better out there for you. You can seek God and have a relationship with him and make your world more fair. You can still find wisdom. Yes. I guess he's talking about like fools, whatever.
Yeah.
Contentment in darkness, being happy with what you have.
Yeah.
But also just knowing like you can create something else.
Yeah. And the thing is about that statement is I don't think a lot of people understand that God works, but you have to commit to him. And he'll pull you out of the darkness, but you got to commit, and it's going to be work. But you gotta have faith, and you gotta trust him and follow his instructions. He'll pull you out of darkness.
You gotta talk to him.
You gotta talk to him.
It's just that simple. When people think about prayer, and sure, there's people who have that gift of like pulling in scriptures and listen. That's a great way to pray. Like we read that book, How to Pray, and it's like praying over people, pulling in scripture. But some people have that gift to be like, Father God, and dear Lord, and you just get it, right? Yeah. I'm not saying that that's the only way to pray. The best, the way that you pray is you talk to God and you ask God questions and you sit there and you wait for him to answer you or give you an instruction, but you bring it to God. It's so funny how sometimes it's so easy to forget. We go to everybody else talking about our problems. Everybody else, we go through all of these steps trying to figure out all of these plans first, and then we go to God. And it's so interesting because it's like, try to flip that. Especially, the trigger could really be when you are really happy or really sad.
Yeah.
Whenever you have an extreme emotion, go to God and see what he says. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's just my, whatever. That's not what it says over here. But anyway, the conclusion of the matter. What is Solomon's conclusion of the matter? And how does it apply? How does it apply to you and yours? Okay, so the conclusion of the matter is in the last final chapter 12.
Yeah.
12:13. Do you want to read it?
Yep. The end of the matter, all that has been heard. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is a whole duty of a man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. So the overall theme is, fear God, and then we know that fearing God is wisdom. And that leads to reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, praying, worshiping him, following God's instructions when he gives you a download. You might not know why. You might not know what is going on. This doesn't sound okay, because you got to remember, when you listen to God and read the Bible, the reason it's so difficult is because we are natural born sinners, and it sounds difficult and hard for us to do, but it's not, because if you believe in God, you believe Jesus died on the cross for your sins. In today's society, and back then, this is always the case, that you're looked at differently. You're looked at differently, like, oh, you believe in God?
Isn't that so interesting?
Yeah.
That it's always the case in so many settings. It's like there's something to that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think people don't like to be corrected, and people don't like to feel like they have some standard put on them.
Yeah.
But wow, that's really interesting. All right, so I would say, you already said what the conclusion of the matter is. How does it apply to you and yours? I'll answer that part. We are literally trying to follow God's word. As uncomfortable as it is, it's hard. I rarely get it right. I mean, I just keep trying every day. We just keep trying. And one of the hardest things is being real about what's happening. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, this is this is really happening, and what does God say about it? And then when you see what God says about it, being real about the fact that, like, well, I don't really want to do this, but I understand that it has to be done because this is what he says about it. That's really the long and short of what we're doing here. So it's like we're reading the Bible, we're showing people that, like, you should read with us too, because it's really kind of fun, and it's so necessary. When we set out to do this, it was kind of like a challenge, because we're like, well, we should probably do this, right? Let's do it together, since we haven't either of us read it from cover to cover. We just kind of know little pieces, and you go to church and they tell you to study this or do that, go to Bible study, but like we're like, let's read it from cover to cover. But now that I'm actually reading it, it's like I could not do this without this information. I just feel like I was so not only lost before, but like I was missing so much information. So I guess I will say I was really lost. Not that I'm less lost. I'm still probably lost. But it's like so interesting to have this information and to know where to go to get the information.
Yeah.
So how does it apply to you and yours? We're really trying to do exactly what he's saying. Fear God, worship him, follow the commandments, and understand that, everything's going to be judged by God in the end. So might as well live a life for God, because nothing else is worth it. You know what I mean? Like, why are you over there doing something else? It's like ridiculous. Anyway, do you have any shout outs this week? I have a couple shout outs.
Yes, actually, I want to shout out Fourth Quarter. It is my sports podcast, and we live every Tuesday. It's me, Mo, Craig. Catch us on YouTube. We just talk about sports from a fan's perspective. And if you get tired of listening to, I'm not going to say any names, but just mainstream sports media, come over here, man, and get some good analysis, good sports jargon, and different topics that aren't being talked about. There's some that are, but, just from a different perspective. I also have another shout out. She was in the live chat, but my friend Rose, we have this HBCU homecoming. We are back. We're going to be filming every week. An episode is going to drop every week, and it's just basically about. We both went to HBCUs. Faith went to HBCU as well. She's probably going to make some guest appearances on there, but it's just about.
HBC, the homecoming podcast.
So it's just about, if you went to HBC or you love HBCUs, we're just giving our perspective on current events and how it relates to the HBCU experience.
Dope. Okay, so I'll go ahead and shout out Misdemeanor Joe. If you haven't seen her channel, she's actually got a couple things going on. She's into wellness and fitness, so she's showing women over 40 how to get their mental right through working out and eating right. And so follow Misdemeanor Joe. We also have a channel called D City Life Sisters, where we gather every week on Thursday to talk about whatever's happening in pop culture. On Friday, we do a recap of a reality show that we're watching called Ready to Love, but we're going to actually probably do other shows on Friday as well. Another shout, two other shout outs that I have are like external. The first one is, I've been reading a lot of stuff and listening to a lot of Cal Newport. He wrote Deep Work, and he also wrote So Good They Can't Ignore You. So he's an author, and he has a lot of good stuff out there. And I'm learning about just like the slow burn of like doing things consistently and understanding that you can't do great things quickly necessarily. Like they have to be sort of like, you have to beat on your craft. So Kyle Newport, shout out to him. Got to shout out Coach Prime. Okay, let me tell you something. I am so inspired. It's like, I'm not even a football person, but as I noticed what was happening, and I do know who Deion Sanders is, but as I've been just seeing this story unfold and like really looking back, and so many people have said now that like, oh, he's such a great athlete. If you think about his story, he has the best story in athletics, because not only was he the player who got touchdowns and was in the World Series at the same time, which is unheard of.
That's crazy.
But then he goes on to do great things, and then he goes on to be a broadcaster. He goes on to be this amazing coach. It's like he's lived like 4 different lives, 5 different lives, and to think that this person had this surgery, like it's so fascinating to me. Because I didn't realize that's why he was walking like that. Yeah. But now he got 2 toes amputated.
I think 2, 3. Yeah.
So anyway, shout out to him because he's showing off. He's showing out. He's showing up. He's showing out. I watched that game today and I really enjoyed it. And it's so good to see a Black man doing his thing, bringing what he has to the world, and to see that he's out here affecting lives. And it's not even just the players that he's coaching, but he's touching other people. And I'm truly inspired by him and his leadership. Like I was looking at some of the things he was saying, and like people I remember when he was playing out here, like people would call him cocky and all this stuff, and it's just like, man, let that man do what he got to do. But he's also very effective. So if you're effective, shouldn't you be allowed to say what you know what I'm saying? Also, you can be allowed to say whatever you want because everybody has the right to say whatever they want. So I just appreciate his confidence and just shout out. That's my shout out for the week.
And not only that, he's a great father.
Yeah.
And he believes in Jesus.
Oh, yes. That's the best part. That's the best part right there.
Yeah.
And he teaches that to his players too, to really delve into their faith.
His theme song is a gospel song.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, listen.
Guys.
It was so fun to hang out with y'all today. We'll be back next week. We'll be reading 1 Kings 10 and 11, 2 Chronicles 9, Proverbs. We're going to end Proverbs 30 and 31. Then we're going to go back into 1 Kings 12 to 14 and 2 Chronicles 10 through 12.
It talks about Solomon, so we're gonna find out.
Yeah, we're gonna find out what's going on with Solomon, and I guess it's like the end of his life. But here's the deal, guys. We are trying to inspire people to pick up their Bible and just read along with us. You don't have to be a Bible reader already. We just want to encourage a community of people to read their Bible. And so that's what we're doing here on Is It Crazy? Is It God? We're showing you by example that you don't have to be some genius. You could just be a regular married couple or a single person or a child. As long as you can read, or if you have an audio app, you can listen, have it read to you. But there's a lot to be taken from this. So we just hope that you feel encouraged to read along with us or read at your own pace. It is definitely a must read, the Bible. So, as we always say, don't take our word for it. Go to the source. Read your Bible. All right. Bye, guys. Bye, guys.